Okay. All right, so let's get going. I'm Shelley Richards, in case you don't know me. I know a number of people here today. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Today we're doing Getting the Most from Fulton History. And I will tell you, today's presentation is based on my use of that website, which I will tell you I am on it every day. I'm doing a research project for the St. Patrick's Cemetery. Some of you don't know, I've written a couple books about the cemetery, but I'm reproducing the earlier records of the cemetery because they were destroyed. The original burial records were destroyed. So one of my favorite sites is Fulton History to find obituaries, marriage records, birth records, and the like. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is the success and lack thereof, but making it easier for you to get what you want, because a lot of people say, just never can seem to find what I want to find. And that's really the idea, is to get on there and find. So I'm going to share it with you today, with the things that have made me successful in finding the information that I find. And so there's other ways to do some of this stuff. I won't purport to be the know-it-all, but I'm going to tell you what I do know. So let's get started. I'm going to cross over here. I think I'm going to be in some people's way here, so all right, I'll try to stay out of the way. So here's what we're going to cover today. I'm just going to talk to you briefly about the site itself. We're going to talk just real briefly about the OCR software, and that's the Optical Character Recognition software that allows a scanned document to be digitized so it can find the words that you want it to find. I'm going to talk about the site itself, the 4 different areas of the site, basic tips and strategies for searching, and then I'm going to get into some real practical stuff. I'm actually going to go online with you and we're going to do some stuff. I'm going to show you some formulas that I have that you can use, and you can see them copied for finding obituaries, finding birth and marriage announcements. And then I'm going to talk right at the end about how to save those, okay? How to enlarge them, the articles, and save them, because I know that that's a problem for people too. You can download the whole page, but then this little article and you can't even see it. So we're going to go through all this. Okay, so how many of you have been on Fulton History before? All of you. How many of you use it occasionally? How many are frequent users? Okay, all right, good. We got some experience in here. This is what you should see when you get on the site. This is the home page. And the goldfish, he swims around. He's a funny little guy. And see that circle? There's always changing pictures, and there's music that plays. And I was just telling Dawn today, I use this thing so much that I know when there's a problem on this website, the picture is blank in the middle and the music stops playing. That's when you know, you go, uh-oh, something happened. And I don't know if any of you recently were part of, he had ransom. He got a ransom notice. They took his site from him. They stole his site. And so when you go to the site and it was a big blank in the middle and no music, and I go, oh, this is big. And sure enough, they tried to make him pay, the Bitcoin ransom thing. Wow, craziness. But he had made, this guy is so clever, he had made actually a mirror copy of his website. So within like 3 or 4 days, he was up and running again. No ransom. Yay for the small guy.
Was he able to? He was angry though.
Oh, I think, imagine the work that did.
Was he able to find who it was?
I don't know about that. So, all right. So Tom Trinisky, he's the guy. He runs the site. His whole computer setup, the whole network setup, is in his backyard in a gazebo. I laugh when I think about this. 40 million newspaper pages on the internet. He's done this by himself. I'm sure he's got no help here and there, but it's unbelievable what this guy has done. Like I said, he uses optical character recognition software. So he scans all his own images from microfilm. So it's not necessarily first generation. A lot of times his scanning is second generation. So he's scanning from microfilm, which is important to note because sometimes some of the pages are looking pretty, you can't read them all, they're all blurry, but he's just copying what he's been given. So he's literally the third generation of a lot of this stuff. You've got to have Adobe Flash Player on your computer to use it, and he occasionally does upgrades that you have to get the higher upgrade. So if you find it was working and now it's not working, it could be the Adobe. You might not have the version that you need if he's changed that. Okay. Here we go. These are some common problems that you're going to run into. If you've done any of the copying of the actual print, which you can do, these are certain letters that turn into other letters when the OCR, when it's scanned. So you can see that things get misspelled. So it's not a perfect system the way, but I got to tell you, it's the best. It's a great opportunity that we have to find information that we really can use. Okay, so this is you got four options. As you can see, you got your site down here, right? This is the site, the four options, and I've just kind of blown out the options up here. So I just want to talk briefly about these. So the search archives, that's where you actually go in and put your search identifiers in and get the articles in the newspapers. The second one says browse my archive. This is everything he has on his website, which is more than just newspapers, by the way. It's a huge history of Central New York. If you got people from Central New York, I don't know if you've looked beyond that, but he's got a huge archive of Central New York stuff. So you can view all his holdings. He's got actual census data for many New York State counties from 1790 to 1920. Other critical thing here to know, and this is really important, download an Excel sheet of all the newspapers he scanned. Last time I checked, which was just a few weeks ago, he had done an updated list at the end of last year. He had something like 1,200 different newspapers that he has scanned. 850 of those are from New York. So it's primarily a New York project right now, but it might, who knows where he's going to go with it. Then we've got help and fact, frequently asked questions. If you haven't been there before, go there. That's where he talks about the problems with his site, the good things he's done, tips for using it. And a lot of the stuff I'm talking to you about today came from there. And in addition to one other site, a gentleman who's got a pretty extensive site. And then here, because this is free, right? Don't we love free things? That's where you send him money. Support the project, send him money. So I know those of us who use it frequently should be sending him, a nice little penny here and there. Okay, the first thing, if you haven't done it, you need to download that Excel sheet of all the newspapers he's had, because it's kind of cueing you to where you can look and have success. You might not be having success because the things you're looking for, he doesn't have scanned in the newspaper. He hasn't scanned those newspapers. So that's the first thing you need to do. And he's done a great job by county. So it's a nice sheet. You can see by counting all the newspapers that he's scanned. He's done out of state. He's got about, maybe 15 different states that he's actually gone into. Most of them are around New York. But that's the first thing you want to do. So you can see you want to select Browse on the first page. You go in there, and then you're going to select the historical newspaper folder, which is right here. And I do believe it's 4 from the end. And then once you click that, it's the second thing in from the left. Select the folder called Spreadsheet of Newspapers. You can click that, it'll open, and then you can save it to your machine. Okay? And take a look at what you can or cannot, the newspapers. And that's going to be important to remember for something I'm going to talk about later. So get to that next. Okay, basic search things. These are things you gotta kind of be keeping thoughtful about as you're using this site. Pay attention to the variant spellings of a person's name. And what do I mean by that? How many of you have Catherines in your family? Is that with a C or a K? Is that with an E or an A? Right? And you know those newspaper men, they didn't care whether it was C or K. They said, well, my mother's C, so it's going to be C when it actually was K. All right, so you've got to keep those in mind. No personal background to help you narrow your searches, such as the husband's, wife's name, and use of a middle initial. Very important. John Smith. Oh, how many of you got John Smith? I hate that name. Back in the day, women were not known by their own name. They were known by Mrs. John Smith. So if you're searching for Catherine Smith, and Catherine, you know, died back in the 20s or was married back in the 10s or the 1800s, you know, women didn't have a name, unfortunately. It went by the man's name. So it's important that if you can find out the man's name, to know the man's name. And if he had a middle initial. Children's names, especially the children's married name. Right? The girls especially, if they went off and got married, that's a clue that will link you. John Smith's daughter married Joe Jones. Her name is now Mary Jones. So that name, Smith and Jones, are linked. You often see in obituaries and marriages where they tell you the names of the daughters who survived and their married name. So that, again, important to remember.
Another problem that I've run into is when a woman gets married, she uses her maiden name initial for
Absolutely.
her middle initial.
Absolutely.
And some didn't do that.
So, exactly.
Gosh.
We'll help you solve that problem. Today, we will. We will help you solve that problem. Here's another thing. Pay attention to how various newspapers format their work. So, Lockport Union Sun Journal. Earlier newspapers, there was no heading. It was just copy after copy after copy. And you know, words that were typically used in obituaries were died, death, passed on to their eternal reward, right? And then they got clever and they started putting headings, obituaries, or obituary, or deaths and funerals. Those are key because that allows you to go exactly to those pieces of information in a newspaper. And again, so when you're reading these things, pay attention to the words they're using, the headings that they're using. This is going to help you, again, narrow in a lot more efficient way. Variant references of the same place. Again, I'm using a cemetery example. And I only do this because I stumbled upon it. St. Patrick's Cemetery at first was known as the New Catholic Cemetery. Then it was known as the Gooding Street Cemetery. And then finally, almost 30 to 40 years after it was in existence, they started using St. Patrick's Cemetery. Honest to God, you're like, what the heck, right? So understand those, that could be variant references to the same place.
Are you going to change it to All Saints now?
No, it will never change. That will never change. Never ever. The church is still, the edifice is still known as St. Patrick's. The parish is All Saints now. Here's another important thing. Longer references will be hyphenated in frequently because you've got narrow columns, newspaper columns. So the other day I was looking for Joseph Cunningham. Now that's three syllable Cunningham, right? Chances are that name will be hyphenated. That's, you know, so you got to think about that kind of possibility. St. Patrick's Cemetery, when I've used that, if that, fit that on one line, that's almost always hyphenated. So you have to figure out some of the variants of it.
And I think I read someplace that sometimes they didn't even hyphenate them grammatically correct.
Correct,
So that's-
exactly, yeah. And so you can see down here, I'm just giving you one example. St. Patrick's Cemetery may become St. Patrick's Sem dash, or it could become St. Pat dash Rex Cemetery. All sorts of variations of that. And
What was it known as originally, you mentioned before, Gooding Street Cemetery?
the new Catholic Cemetery, because the old one was out on Summit Street. Excuse me. Okay. Okay, now, I'm gonna we're gonna get to the options within the search box, but I will tell you straight up, there are certain things that I just use and I don't, pretty much vary from that, and I've had a lot of success. I always use Boolean, the Boolean option for how to search. And I would recommend that you do that too.
What does Boolean really mean?
I'm not exactly sure what it means, but it's these operators. It's a type of search. Type of search that allows you to use these operators, okay?
You will accept any one of those?
Yes, I will explain those. So, the ones I use most frequently are and, or, I don't use not as much, and then the parenthetics I do use. So, oh hi, you need a chair. From which coming? There you go, I'm sorry. The and example, Shelley Richards and Lockport. This would find only the newspaper pages on which both of those words were present. So my name would have to be there, spelled exactly like that. And Lockport would have to be there, spelled exactly like that. All right? Now, or, remember we just talked about the various ways that things could be. This is a really important one when you don't know what the spelling could be. So you might say Shelley Richards Lockport and St. Patrick's Cemetery, the whole thing spelled out, or St. Patrick's Sem dash, or, so you can put in those variations. So it'll look for one or both or all of those on the same page. But it allows you, rather than going and doing a whole new search for each variation, that or thing will make you put it all in one and it'll all come up. That's another I use often, Shelley Richards and Lockport and died or death or buried or, right? Not that I'm dead. Sometimes I feel like I'm dead. Okay. And not. Now, I gotta tell you, I'm not real, this is not one I don't use that much. But here's when you would use it. You have to, the and not, it's important for you, like when you start searching a lot, and let's say you're getting all sorts of stuff, you go, I don't want anything from Avon, New York. I don't want an Avon, New York newspaper. And you got lots of hits, right? So you want to get rid of that. Well, you would do, and again, I'm going to explain this, but it would be and not, file name contains Avon, New York. All right, and I'll show you that later, but that's how you would use it. So that would eliminate those things from your search.
Excuse me, how could Michigan newspapers come out from Avon, New York?
Michigan? I don't know. Michigan would have been in some Avon, New York paper. Yeah.
Just has to be a word.
Just
Yeah.
has to be the
Could
word
be
Michigan.
another article.
Yeah, just the
Oh,
word
okay.
Michigan.
But
Yeah,
just
yeah.
included the word Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now the parenthetics, I gave you the above example, and now let's go to the next page here. All right, here's some more basic search. This is the parenthetic stuff. This is really, really helpful because it really narrows down to certain newspapers, certain time frames. or a specific city in a range of years for a particular person. So if you want to just range to a specific city, that's where that Excel sheet comes in real handy. The cities of the newspapers that he scanned. Very, very important. Because here, I just want to do Shelley Rich, I want to narrow it just down to Buffalo. Because I know something happened to me in Buffalo. So I would do Shelley Richards and that is the name, that is the convention right here. So you can cut these out and put them on your computer so you remember these little formulas like this. So Shelley Richards and file name contains Buffalo, New York, and notice all the parenthetics here and how that's correct. Would just bring up Buffalo, New York newspapers only with my name in them. Now let's say, I want to see what happened to her between 1927 and 1934. Now I'm not specifying any type of city at this point, I'm just saying, let's see what comes up with Shelley Richards' name in any newspaper in these years. That's the formula that I would write. Notice the Boolean operators, and notice this little thing here. Those are on the upper left part of your, at least on mine, it's a shift key, and it's, what is that called, a tilde? A tilde? That's a good word, isn't it? Right out of the bowels of my mind, right? They have two double tildes, so that gives you it'll search for 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34. You can put anything in there. If you want to do just 1 year, you would just cut out the tildes and the other thing and just do the 1 year. Say you want to see what happened to yourself and, Cindy Ribick, file name contains, and, 1928. Where were you in 1928? A glint in your mother and father's eye.
They weren't around.
So now let's say you want to put those two together. Shelley Richards and file name contains Buffalo, New York between these. You're very, very helpful. Now you're narrowing it more and narrowing it more and narrowing it even more. This is a great, and I'll show you, I've got a couple examples of this at the end where I'm going to demonstrate. Let's say something happened, but you're not sure the year it happened. Marriage, for example. I know they were married. I know they were married in Buffalo. I have no idea when. Great. This would be a great little way to put into your browser, search engine.
Shelley, if you just put 1927-1934, you're not going to get it?
No, he uses these tildes. Yeah. Yep. Save this page. You paste this page right up, and you can put my little face right on it. All right. Now here's what they call wildcards. There's two wildcards. I tend to use the star. I tend to use this, and that works for me. I haven't used the question mark, but it works as well. If you want to go and write out, this is the old Catherine example, right? Is it an A, or is it an E, or is it a K? Here's another way you can search that if you want. Try Catherine. See, you're putting in the question mark there because you don't know whether it's an A or an E, and it'll find all of the variants of that if you do that. You can also use two of these. Let's say you want to account for all three of these. So you put the question mark there because you don't know whether it's a C or a K. And then you put the question mark there because you don't know whether it's an A or an E. I will tell you one of the differences I have found from this asterisk to this question mark. That question mark takes twice as long. I don't know why that is. Twice as long. I tend to use the star. Here's the other thing, the star. This is supposedly a single letter in a location, the question mark. The star will find multiple. maybe it's not only a middle initial, but a whole middle name. I saw where my great aunt Kathleen Smith Ward, it wasn't Kathleen S., it was Smith. Her whole name was spelled out. So if you put the star in there, you'll get either the initial or the whole middle name. All right, searching for an obituary. Now, I'm a simple person. I don't, those nice long things, they're great. The file name contains, and I use those, but I will tell you, see this little thing here? This little, I have found 75% of my obituaries in that way, using that formula. The name of the person, and then you can do variations of the name depending on what you need to find. The city that you think you want to search for, and this is the year that they died, right? So I'm trying to find Shelley Richards, died in Lockport, 1905. So it's going to search for wherever those 3 words come up on the same page.
Shelley, if someone died or lived, say for example, in the town of Lockport and they were buried in the town of Lockport, would you need to put town if it was written that way in the obituary?
No, it'll still read just Lockport.
Okay.
If you want to try town of Lockport, it's a little more specific. I always try that formula first. You got to start somewhere. I always start with that formula first, and then I go into more
All
complicated.
right, when you put it in Lockport, does that refer to what is in the obituary, or is it
The whole page.
the
It's searching
location, the location of the newspaper? So if it said Lockport Sun and Journal at the top,
It'll say anywhere on that page, it says Lockport. And if you choose hits as the sorting type, Lockport, you wait till you see how many times, if you're looking in Lockport newspapers, well, I'm not, I'm just saying Lockport showing up, that name showing up with Lockport, showing up in 1905, most of the hits tend to be Lockport. So that raises all the hits up, and then usually it's the first choice on my bar, is the actual obituary I'm looking for. I went around and around and around to find that combination, so I start there. So remember, it's not just searching the obituary, it's searching the whole page that he has scanned. The whole page is being searched. I never mess with that. I always keep it at boolean. Fuzziness, I gotta tell you, you can go read about fuzziness. I started reading it and I glazed over with the directions and I go, well, we're not gonna be doing this, right? I've been successful without being fuzzies. Fuzzy enough, I don't need any more fuzziness. You can go read, Tom explains a little bit more about that, and there's a guy named Cliff Lemaire, whose address I got at the end of this presentation. He explains a lot about it. I just said, I'm not putting it in here, it's too wacky.
So you don't check any of those boxes off then?
I keep it just like this. I don't do any, I zero on the fuzziness, 1,000 items a page. I mean, you can drop that down if you want, but, because I usually, depending on, I usually don't have 1,000 hits. If you get it right, you won't be having 1,000 hits. I never go off of that. The other hits are find all of the words, find the single word. They make no sense to me, the other options there, and I'll show you those other options in a minute.
Ms. Shelley, when you put your name in there, the two words, do they come together or are they separated on the page?
No, in boolean, it looks as this is one hit, so we'll look at them together. So that's a good question. So if I put this, and I selected, I'm trying to think, find all the words, it would find Shelley, and it might find Richards over here and Shelley down here. It doesn't show them together. You want them together. That's why boolean is so important.
so you don't have to put the quotes in.
You
there.
can do that.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Oh.
That's another option if you're not using boolean, which is how I used to search. And then I learned the beauty of Booley. It sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? Like a magic formula or something. But yes, you can use the quotes, because the quotes around a group of words will treat it as one. All those words need to be found together.
But we don't have to use quotes on the bulletin.
You don't have to use quotes on the Booley, which is why I use it, that I'm not putting quotes in there.
Okay.
Interesting too, written hand instead of just the way it was done on the other page.
Right, this is simpler, isn't it? This is where I start. Believe me. So 75% of the times, what I'm looking for comes right up. I go, oh, yay. Throw a little party and, yeah.
What's in that last white block? I can't really read it.
Here,
Hits.
hits.
Oh,
You could sort, hits is the frequency, the number of times these words come up on the paper is hits. So that'll be you could sort by date, the dates of the newspaper. I didn't find it as successful. I've always stuck with the hits. Okay. Okay, so now see, I'm giving you second, third, fourth, and fifth. This is how my mind works. Your mind might work a little different. But this is kind of how, if I don't get it on the first try, here's what I kind of do second. You know, a lot of times the first thing I'll do if a name like Joe Cunningham didn't come up, Lockport in 1905, I'll put in a star for his middle initial. And boom, there it is. Or you can go, get more specific and say, let's say too many other newspapers come up, you say I want to get rid of those newspapers. You just say, I just want Lockport newspapers. So you can do that. I've done this a lot too, depending on the era that I'm looking. If it's an older obituary I'm looking for, and like I said, remember, a woman was often referred to by her husband's name, or it was widow of Joe Cunningham. His name's going to be in there no matter what, in many respects, whether he's alive or dead.
Shelley?
So I'll use his name instead of the woman's name.
Where you have used file name contains Lockport, New York, does it read the comma? Do you have to have the comma in there?
I've always, it's the way it's written in his
I gotcha.
files.
I gotcha.
That's going back to his naming schema for how he names his files.
I gotcha. Okay.
So the comma, I believe, is in there, so that's why I've used it. Mhm. Yeah. So the variation, instead of my name, I'm using my husband's name in the same other information. Because if I died, my thing might have said Mrs. Joseph Richards. Or it could have said, here's another little problem. So in the 20s, for example, remember the formatting I talked about? When I'm finding an obituary in the 20s, that's kind of a whole different thing, because the way it was formatted in Lockport newspapers was it had the person's last name at the top of the obituary. And then they go down and say, Margaret, wife of Shelley, wife of Joseph Richards. So I'm searching for Shelley Richards, and how is that split up? Richards at the top, Shelley, buried someone there. But who's always mentioned in his folklore is Joseph, whether he's a widow of or former whatever. So he's in there. So I have found a lot of obituaries that way, because they've split the woman's name up. The fourth thing. Again, some of this is OCR problems, some of it's the hyphenation issue. If I'm really having a hard time finding an obituary, I might just go to the last name, and this is the same. So I cut out my first name, I keep the last name, Lockport, 1905, and I add another piece of information. Remember, one of the things you got, remember other pieces of information of that person's life that might be specific to them. In my case, I try St. Patrick's. I don't use cemetery, I just try St. Patrick's, because you remember the hyphenation problems and stuff? I just go with that, and that will pull up, and there's 3 ands in there, so there's 4 pieces of information that have to be on that page, and that's another way that I have found obituaries. Now sometimes I have to tend to look through a lot more, just because you're using this single word here. So sometimes they'll come up just Richard, it's that S, right? But I've narrowed it down in many ways to these kinds of things. So just another way to kind of do it. Fifth. Eliminate the name and put the name of the cemetery, city, location, year, and any other known fact of the deceased. So now you're into kind of ancillary information. Remember when I told you about the maiden names being mentioned, survived by Mrs., Mary Jones? So I might just put the cemetery, the city, and then, the year, and Mary Jones. I found things like that, because the name, sometimes things get mangled. Names get mangled and they're not reading the name, but all that other information is found. So the key thing is you can't give up, but you've got some formulas here that you can use now to kind of go at it. I would, the other thing, I've written down what I've searched before because you get confused. Did I look for that before? Now, here's what I'll tell you, and that's, if you type in the same search criteria, exactly the same, it'll pop up and you go, oh, I've tried that before. It has a memory. That search box has a memory. So if you've used something and you've used it exactly that way before, it'll come up and you go, okay, that's not it, I can't use that one, I've already used that one. So it kind of thinks for you a little bit. All right, I'm gonna do a little demo for you now. Let's hope it works. Here we go. I'm sorry you can't hear the music. It's all honky tonk. Oh, no, honky tonk just went off. Oh, he's got the mysterious music. So I'm going to go right here to the first one. This is where we're going to search.
Wait, how did you get to that?
Killing me out.
First one.
Okay, we'll go right back. That's all right. No, look it. There's no. All right.
I've never seen that.
That's all right. You've never seen the little
No.
doohickey there? Oh, I love it. See, he's.
I was on Fulton History just last week, and that does not look at all familiar.
Really?
Yes.
There's the bed.
You always have to have the Adobe Flash.
Yes. Yeah.
Shelley, the answer to his question, it could be the browser that he's using.
Oh, okay.
Every browser
A little different.
And
Okay.
some of them, you can't even go anywhere else.
All right. I'm using Chrome.
Yeah. Use Chrome or Edge.
Edge. Okay.
Don't use Firefox.
Well, Al, I'm not sure I can answer that, Al. I don't know. All I know is I see that little fish in the morning. Now, if you come back, if you bookmark, let's say, this is your menu, right? You can click on any one of these. I'm clicking here to go because I want to search. If any of you bookmark and you bookmark from this image, when you go click your bookmark, this is exactly where you'll go. You won't go to the home screen. That could be what you've done, Al. Because that, Okay. All right. Let me see if I have another example in here. Let's go try this. Does somebody want to give me an example, and I'll see if I can find anything? Or do you want me to show you first? You know what? I'll show you first, and then we'll try to find somebody else's. Okay, this is just one I just did yesterday. I'm working down my my database list. Joseph Cunningham, and all I knew was his name, Joseph Cunningham, no middle initial, and that he had died in October 15th, 1922. I didn't know any spouse, and I'm assuming that he was buried in St. Patrick's. So here's how I started out with Joseph. Now see the memory?
Yeah.
I looked at this yesterday, see, so now I can just click it. And everything's the same, and keep it in 1,000, Boolean, fuzziness I don't deal with, hits is fine. All right. And see over here, it says, to view this page, ensure the Adobe Flash Player version is 11.1 or higher. Okay. So we're good, I hit search. And this is exactly what I did yesterday. This was not pre-planned. I didn't find one that would be an automatic hit. This is exactly what I did yesterday. And look what comes right up at the top. What do you see here? Lockport, New York, Union Sun and Journal, always good. That's pretty much what I'm looking for. 1922, even better. So I'm in the same year, woohoo. And then I kind of quickly scan down here. I don't see Joseph's name. So, and oh, I got another 22 down there. Sometimes there's two of them because there is a death notice and a funeral notice, and they're on different days.
Can I ask another question?
Sure, here I am.
Because I had this question last week. You have that, bring up that obituary, Lockport, New York, Union Sun and Journal, 1922. Is there a way to find out, well, in this case, you can pretty well figure it out, but depending what's written, you can't. How to get the exact date of that newspaper?
I'll show you. I will show you. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to click this. Now, when I have a wider screen, mine I'm not syncing real well. I usually have a wider screen capability here. I'm just going to get this over. Now, you see on this newspaper here?
Yeah.
You see all those colors? Those are your hits.
All those what?
All the colors. See the colors on the new? We got red, we got purple, we got green.
Okay.
Every word that you put in that search box, if it's a hit, it is assigned a color on the page.
Okay.
Right? So you know immediately. There was a time when that didn't always happen. Oh my God, your eyeballs would fall up trying to find all those words. But look what we got here. Woo! What do you see right here? Obituary. Now I'm going to see when I do this, I push my cursor to the right, you see those buttons that come up?
Yeah.
I want to enlarge this.
Okay.
Zoom in, zoom in. Okay, then you got it. Then you kind of got to reorient it on the page here, and you do that by the slide. See the slide bars on the bottom and the side?
Yeah.
Okay. Now my site's not so good, so I'm going to enlarge it some more. All right. So I keep pushing my cursor over the right side. Those little zoom in things come up more, more, more. Oh, it's Joseph Cunningham. Woo-hoo. I still get excited about that. I'm sorry. I'm weird. I can't take it. And I try to get it as big in the frame as I can. Okay? Joseph Cunningham died on Sunday, October 15th. Now, what year did he die? How do we know? 1922, is that right?
Well, that's good if it says in the obituary.
All right, Al.
But I looked,
hang with me, Al. Hang with me.
I looked at a criminal report in the newspaper.
Here we go. Go all the way up to the top. There you go.
Okay, that works if it's there on the newspaper, but I had a newspaper that the date wasn't on that page.
Al, do you think we can answer that question? I can answer that question. And I'll show you how to get to the previous page.
Okay.
Yes, because had that happened to me. How
Because I
many of you had that
couldn't
happen to you?
figure
Yeah. All right, we'll show you how to do that. So whenever I record these, you record Monday, because everything is typically written in sometimes on a birth, marriage, or an obituary. They don't always, they just sometimes will use a day, died yesterday. Well, what was that? You know, so you need, I always record Monday, October 16th, 1922 as part of my reference. Lockport Union Sun Journal. I'll show you that in a minute. So now we go back down. All right. All right, I'm going to give a quick demo here. We'll do this, I'll do it again at the end. I'm going to show you how I clip this and save this.
Wait, did you say how to get to that other page?
Not yet, yeah. That's coming.
Okay.
All right, so this is big enough, I can see this. This a little more centered here. Okay. What I do next is I hit the FN key in print screen.
What did I say again?
And that's later, the directions are later for you, but so I'm just gonna talk you so you see it, and then when I go over it again, you'll have the reference. I use FN print screen. That literally is a way to take a picture of everything you see here. It's like the copy function when you have data, okay?
A screenshot?
Like, it's a screenshot, exactly. Then I go to my Word. So you got my little Word thing here. I right-click onto this paper. Watch what happens. Boop. Darn it, there it is, and I can read it. It's bigger. Now I want to get rid of everything around it but just the obituary, and I right-click on this document, on the image again, and you'll see these options that came up? Right-clicking gives you always, wherever you right-click on anything, it tells you the functions that are capable for the item that you've clicked on. This is like a text box right now. So it says I can crop it. See this little ditty up here? That's a cropper. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit that button. And did you see these things kind of appear when I did that?
Yeah.
Watch. See the little crosshatches are on my thing now here? I'm going to put little squares. See the squares? I'm going to put that little crosshatch around that square. See it change?
Yep.
And I'm going to move that right over, like that. Whoop. I'm going to do the same over here. Got to do the same at the bottom.
Can you paste that into a picture document?
There. And then I click outside the box and there you have it. And I typically will do this. Monday, June, was it October? October 16th, 1922, Lockport, Union, Sun, and Journal. Do you know how many times I've typed this?
You sound like October.
Okay, I'll get to that. Via
Why did it
Fulton, I don't know, history.com. And you wanna do via Fulton History because that needs to be part of the reference as well. Yeah,
If you use Evernote, you can also,
do the same thing.
and you can crop it right from the
Right
paper.
from there? Yeah, how many of you use Evernote? Yeah.
I've used it, but I prefer this.
Yeah, right. So, whatever comes, if you have a clipper, that's great. And you can, anything you want. But the idea is, now and then I typically save, then I'll save it. I have a saving schema that I use because I have to keep these organized. I always go last name. So be Cunningham, I always capitalize his name. Joseph. 10, 15, 19, 22, and I use the word either obit or burial, referencing what that date is that I just wrote. That's how, and I save them in a file. That's how I do my naming schemes. Now, if you also want, I'm just going to go back to my thing here. If you want to save the actual PDF reference as well, which you can, it takes just a little more time, but it's actually very handy. I'm going to just see how I can copy this. Right click. So I highlight it and I right click. These are my options. Copy. Then I go back to the document. See, I got my things open right here, very handy. I just click on that. I right click again. That right click, you got to use that right click. Hit paste. And there, now you have, someone says, where did you get that from? Oh, I'll send you the link. And that will come right up. okay? And there you go. So, that's the, that's a quick demo, and the whole shebang. Now, let's go back. Would somebody like to try one in here? And we can maybe try a couple very, Kathy, go ahead.
Bridget Galbelli.
Bridget, oh, now that's a good name. You know why that's a good name? Because there are a lot of people there.
Oh, okay. She used that as her middle name. Her last name was Rinn, R-I-N-N.
R-I-N-N, okay. So what would be the name you'd want to put in here?
As in,
Bridget Galbelli Rinn? Bridget Rinn? Which would be more?
well, I mean, obviously her last name, or married name was Rinn, but in most of the references, I do see Galbelli in it.
Okay. How about we try, look, you know what we'll do right here? We'll put a star in there for a potential middle name.
Okay.
And are you looking for an obituary or?
Yes.
Okay.
She died in 1901.
Okay. And you think she died in Lockport?
Oh, I know she did.
Okay.
There may not be a D in Bridget.
Right? We could try this, so we'll try it. 1901, Kathy?
Yes, in January.
Okay. All right, everything's the same. All right, let's see if we can find that old Bridget. No match, 1901. You know what I'll tell you about Lockport papers? I've had trouble with 1901. I don't know whether some of those newspapers were a problem, but in terms of the numbers of obituaries I found out in 1901, not a lot.
Try the other day.
Yeah, let's try,
Stick that star up.
all right, let's try, let's see. Bridget, let's just try Rinn, and let's just try without a year. Let me just see if we can get anything on her at all with this name. $1879. Oh, there's only one. Let's see what we got in here.
It's probably an estate.
Okay. Let's
When you're
see.
talking about a problem with 1901, would that be because that paper was not scanned into this system?
It could be.
Because I
It
ran
could
into
be.
a 1908 problem similar.
Oh, look what we have here.
And sometimes
Estate
the
of
pages
J.
blur.
Galbelli. Bridget Rinn, Estate J. Galbelli.
Yeah, I think he left for $5.
Reports to the city office, city clerk.
No, that's.
So we know somehow J. Galbelli. You know, now see, what her husband's name was what?
Rinn, R-I-N-N.
What was his first name?
Patrick.
Patrick.
He died in 1889, I believe.
Let's try Patrick and Lockport in 1901. See if anything comes up with his name on it. No. I hate that. It's bad. It's bad. Sometimes I'll spend like a whole day on 2 days. I'm like, oh, just write down. Because I can't stand it and I can't find something.
What if you try just Rinn?
What's that on the right though?
That was from the last.
Oh, from the last one. I'm
Yep, let's try that. That's a good one, Cindy, because that was one of the suggestions. So we're forgetting, see if anything comes up for Rinn in 1901.
Yeah, because there were at least 3 articles.
Now see what happens here. Now I got a 1939 up here, 22, 1961. If
Why is
the
that?
conclusion I'm making about 1901 ain't happening. 1901 is not a good, because it keeps, you know, if it was a big lot of hits, if there's a lot of 1901s and a lot of Lockports, it'd be up to the top. And it typically is, because like Lockport's a very frequent word in the Lockport newspapers. And it's, 1901's not matching that though. Let me ask you something, did they die at the end of the year or the beginning of the year?
Well, January. And according to something I found online, somebody had done a list of obituaries. There should be 3 articles in there in January for Bridget.
Right. and we're not finding them. Like I said, I've had
So
bad
should
luck
do
on
that.
Could it
them.
have been copied by another newspaper and then by a Niagara Falls newspaper?
It could, and you know, that's a great point. Let's do this, let's try Niagara Falls. Because a lot of stuff that was in the Lockport newspaper was also put in the, and you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna use that file name. Because sometimes with January or December deaths, the way it was saved or scanned, the year often gets kicked to the previous year or in terms of the file names of the stuff. So I'm gonna do file name contains parenthetics 1900 to 19, not through, the tildes, tilde, 1902, parentheses. Now, so that's gonna look for that series of years, because we're, you've got 166 hits on that one. Well, let's see what this first one is here.
Maybe that we want to put Bridget back in.
We could think about putting Bridget back in.
And it's the front page.
Let's see, yeah, ooh, Bridget did something.
Sometimes it picks up parts of words.
Pardon me?
I said sometimes it picks up parts of the word within another word.
Right, right. So we got lots of Niagara Falls. Oh, look what it did here. Wow, that's a weird one. Shakespearean. Ooh, Rin.
Red, yeah.
That's Rin. So, on that page. Let's see this. Buffalo, this is a Buffalo paper. Sometimes if, you know, Buffalo newspapers have like Niagara County pages on it. So sometimes there were things included in just
I found $8,000 worth of gold in the garden.
I'll tell you, don't you get sidetracked and start reading somebody's articles? Holy, that's crazy. Oh, the gory stuff. Oh, my Lord, I'm not finding. I can't get that. Rin, there it is. See the yellow one right there? It's a sports thing. No. Let me just see if anything else. Oh, 1901. Let me see that one.
That's the Lockport Journal.
Now, see, that didn't come up before, but because I think we gave the range there, and I think that helped us a little bit. Ooh, what's this down here? Obituary. That looks like an obituary. Michael Wren. Related?
Probably.
Michael Wren died this morning at the home of his niece, Mrs. James Riley. So it found us a good Wren, just not the one you're looking for. Let's see now. Let me see the date on this. Now, Al, here's another thing in terms of dates. Depending on the newspaper, the older newspapers had a side banner where all the dates and stuff were. As the paper progressed over the years, it went to a banner at the top. So if you can't find it at the top, don't forget to look at the sides, even the bottom, if you're not familiar with the newspaper. Because, like I said, they can be all over the place. You'll also notice, too, another way, and sometimes I cheat because I don't want to go back to find the previous page. I look for date lines. And I'll titrate, like sometimes they will say a date in another part of the paper, and I'll try to titrate the date of this paper.
Try to
Yeah, doesn't always work. And you see when you've looked at something, it turns a different color too. Like, I've not looked at this bright blue, but I've looked at that kind of the dull, like purple blue. That shows you what you've looked at and what you haven't looked at.
Now, does that stay the same if you go back at another time after you shut your computer down and come back?
It comes back as you haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let's look at Medina. Medina, well, they sometimes would carry our stuff.
That might be
Let's
another
see,
mic.
then. Here, what do we got under there? No, that's Niagara Falls. See, the trouble when you're finding one word is even hard to eat, especially a small word like that, it's hard to find. There it is again. It's remember I said the LCR does weird things with letters? This is what it did. Rin is R-A-I-N. There it is. So, let's just try, you said try Bridget. Let's try Bridget one more time, but we'll keep,
Or should we try Patrick?
let's try Patrick. All right. No. Let's try initial. We have the star in there. No. Kathy, you stumper.
That's why I'm going upstairs.
All right, all right, let me
Because
just,
Bridget Rin had a daughter named Frances Rin.
Frances ran.
Yeah, she did.
She did. All right, should we try Frances?
Oh, this is 1965.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
oh, you got it.
That was Bridget and Patrick's daughter. Her name was
Oh, all
Frances.
right. You can see all the ones I've been doing.
Sorry, I gave you an impossible one.
That's all right.
Challenge.
All right, let's, I got about 15 more minutes. Let's try, we'll go through the rest of this business here. Let's get to,
You know, we're all gonna go home to the Give us your email.
that was the demo.
Well, the other one.
All right, here's another example. I was trying to find, I have an aunt, she's my great aunt. It's the same thing. You've got to use, marriages use different words. Hymeneal, matrimonial, married, in the headings and in the content. So those are words that you want to consider using in your search, because it's going to bring up those kinds of events.
Can you digress a bit and I never heard that word.
I know, that's old, that's very old, that's used like at the turn of the century. Yeah, and it's a heading, it was a heading in the Lockport newspaper, yeah. Kind of weird, isn't it? Sounds like you're singing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Use known full names of either spouse, whoop, sorry about that, particularly the man if known. Again, we get back to that same situation. So I knew that my Aunt Kathleen Smith was married to Bernard Ward. I didn't know his middle initial, or remember it. I couldn't remember the year they were married, and I couldn't remember whether it was St. Patrick's or St. John's. You know? So this is the example I finally ended up with after 5 tries. I found this after five different, combinations. I started out with my usual combination of, Bernard Ward, Lockport, and I think I used the file name contains for first, because I really did not know, or you could start if you wanted to guess, but this file name contains. But you'll see some of the problems that we've talked about in what came up. Now, you see Kathleen's name, see how they used her name? Ward Smith. All right, that's her last name. But see how they used her name? Kathleen, they didn't use her full name together. They went down there. So if I first started out with Ben Ward and Kathleen Smith, and it didn't come up. Because if you see in this thing, Kathleen Smith was not together. You had Smith up here and Kathleen down there, so you're not gonna, find her. So I ended up going with Bernard with the star because I didn't know his middle initial, and I think I tried it with just Bernard Ward, and that didn't come up what I wanted. So I put his middle initial, and then I just put her first name. Guess, a lot of this is guessing, you're guessing. And I knew they were married in Lockport, and I knew it was either St. John's or St. Patrick's. I didn't put church. St. John's or St. Patrick's would be enough. And then I gave a range of years that I thought would cover their marriage. And sure enough, boom, boom, up it came. And there it is.
Why was the wedding impressive?
I know.
You met that up.
I don't know. My aunt was a very interesting, they were both married much later in life. I think she was almost 39, married for the first time. She was a case, Cindy, you appreciate, she was one of the first caseworkers in Niagara County. Yeah. So and Ben, you ever hear of Ward Beals?
Sure.
That was, he was one of the owners. So he was in a confirmed batch, and she was what they call, what do you call them? A spinster. Oh, God.
Shelley, what was he to Sam Ward?
Brother.
Brother?
So anyways, just another example, different words, and you can see in there, I didn't even actually use any of the matrimonial words, but what's the word that was used here? Marriage. Right? Wedding. Solemnized. That was another, that's a, yeah, I mean, and that's a very unique word. So if you're talking solemnized, you're pretty much, you're in the church, right? So that's what I'm saying, think of these, you gotta be creative in thinking of the words that you pick and you use that potentially could be in that piece of information that you're looking for. This is another one, and I see this frequently. The street that they lived on is often in marriages, obituaries, birth announcements especially, of, Lock Street or of, Prentice Avenue or whatever it is. That's another good set of words to use.
They stopped putting them in events because people would go out in the house while everyone was in the funeral.
Right, yes, yeah, exactly, that's a good point. So we're back, there's a time frame for that, which is a great point you make. There's a time frame for that. Okay. So we're gonna play Operation now. I love that game. I thought that was the whole fun. And I've already showed you this, but now I'm going to give you some specific directions in case you forget. All right. Getting to another page in the same newspaper. Now, there's actually a couple reasons for this. One, the thing that Al said really does happen quite frequently. When they cut the date off, and you go, oh my God, when did this happen? I don't know. And it typically happens more on the cutting the top off than it does the side. Although sometimes, here's another little thing I've noticed, and I don't know why this is, in the 1940s in Lockport newspapers, all the obituaries and funeral notices were on the inside of the newspaper, and however they were scanned, pieces of the information about who it was and when they died was frequently left off because it wasn't flat.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And that happened a lot in the war years, 40, 41, 42, 43, I'm going, what's going on and why is it all? And it was a binding issue, I believe, and his inability, how they were scanned in the first place. So, anyways, craziness. In order to understand the article, exact time and date reference, you have to find the date of the newspaper, obviously. You want to do it. And I've seen a lot of people skip that. I'm like, gotta know when this actually took place. I mentioned where you can find the publication dates, but each newspaper, when you start reading these newspapers, there's stuff you gotta pay attention to. Every newspaper is formatted differently, so pay attention to the formatting, where you find these things and how things are set up. All right, so sometimes you gotta get to another page because that page was cut off. What's important in this little discussion here is this is how Tom Trisnicki, is his naming convention of his pages right here. This is how they were named. And you can see this number right at the end here, right here? That's the sequence of the pages of the paper. Now that's not the page number, but that means, so for example, this date of this, whatever this newspaper is, maybe took from 1874 to 1890. All right, so there's a sequence in here. So what you gotta do is, if this is the file name for the article that you can't find the date on, you copy and paste this particular piece right here. You put it into the search box, and then you change the number one more or one less at the end here. See the difference between these two? I now have typed in 1873 from the original, which is 1874 here. So I'm going back in that newspaper one page. Or I can type in 2 numbers ahead, depending, right?
So those aren't years, those are page numbers?
Those are page,
Oh.
it's his naming scheme, his date, his naming scheme for these pages. So let me give you a demo of that. And I did it before, you'll see I did this, I'll do it again. Or no, I didn't do this yet, I'm sorry. All right, let's do. We'll use my Aunt Kathleen again. And, all right, this is the one we want. All right. You can see, we're going to do a little pretend here, but now you'll see, this is the first page, right? Can we go back? Can we go back a page on this?
No.
No, because it's the previous day, right? You got the first page, so you know on this one you got to go one ahead. And we're pretending that we can't read this, so this is for purposes. But here, the article you can see is down here. And I want to get to that. So I can't find the date. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this, and see I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to hit copy. I'm going to go up here in the browser box. I'm going to eliminate this. And I'm going to right click on the browser box and paste. And there's the document of the page I want to find another date for. So what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to go one ahead, because if I go one back, like you said, it'll be, instead of being May 16th, it'll be May 15th. So I'm going to just delete the 4. And go to 5. I'm going to hit search. And now see what comes up down here is the one I just typed in. I'm going to click that. And now I'm on page 2. See page 2 over here. So then I go, okay, I hope the date's on this page, because those bums cut it off on the other page. Oh, there it is. Wednesday, May 25th. 1955. I have had to go sometimes, in some cases, 3, 4, and 5 pages ahead, because if they tended to cut it off one page, a lot of times there's a few pages included in that mess. So it took me, I had to figure this out, it took me a little bit to figure this out. The other reason you might want to do this, have you ever read an article and you've gotten into the continuation page?
Yes.
Continue from page 1. You're like, where's the rest of that article? You find the page that you're on, and then you either add or subtract. You do the same thing, but you add or subtract differently, and you'll find page 1. Okay? I mean, I've had that happen. How many of you had that happen? Yeah, right, so that's how you get to, the other page.
You say they put continued on page
Right,
5.
yeah. Or
Sometimes that's wrong though, too.
Yeah, right, then you gotta go, where is that page? Yeah, right, then you go,
Very
know,
often,
yeah,
one
it's
of the
right.
newspaper today.
Some of the very older Lockport papers didn't have the name on the top of
No,
each
they had a
page
left
of the
banner.
paper. They had
Left
a
banner.
left banner.
Well, on the paper I was on, they only put the date on the odd pages.
Oh, really? Okay, so you would have to skip a
And
couple.
I didn't realize that 1955-1875, I didn't realize that 1875 was a page number.
That's his file number, that's his file number.
It's file number,
His
but I
file.
didn't realize that it
It corresponded with
corresponded
the page,
to
yeah.
the page
Yeah,
number.
absolutely, yep. So now we know. And this, I believe, was explained in more detail on that reference I have at the end at clifflemare.com. He goes over it again. I've done the shortened version of it in terms of explaining it. But now that you've seen a demo, you should be able to do that. You just gotta tinker with it a little bit, and then you get it. All right, let's see here. All right. So we did that. We've done this, how to enlarge your, Now, the other thing I didn't mention, if you go on, let's see. Let me just go back and show you something. If you want to download the entire page, you can do that. Right up here, you see the options. You kind of just take your mouse and click it, and this little bar drops down. You can download the entire page. Now, you're not going to see it. But let's say you wanted to save the whole page. You wanted that, and then you can once you save it, you can play with it all you want, offline. But that's another option, and then you can print it. I've done that. It's like, oh God, I can't read that either. So I'm not sure why they're there, that's tricky. So anyways, yeah. All right, let's see, where did I go now? All right, so we did that. And I showed you how to enlarge and copy articles. You want me to go over that again? We're just about out of time.
No.
But that, you've got that, okay. Yep, all the directions are in there. And then you saw the referencing part of that. So here's for more information. This guy was really, this Cliff Lemare, that was an interesting website, and he will give you even more detailed information than he got into that fuzzy factor, and I got fuzzy reading it, some of the other Boolean, there's a few more Boolean operators, and like I said, if you want to, so just quickly, for example, there's a way that you can, if you want to find words that are within like 10 words of each other, and I'm trying to think of why you would need to do that, so I'm like, Kathleen and married, I don't know, but there's a way that you can search for 2 words that are within a certain distance of each other in that article. And I just started reading it, I started glazing over it. But if you want to go read about that, you can.
Shelley, I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but in my case, Adobe is poaching that page. And I have to click on 3 different things to get it to open, and it opens in Adobe. But then Adobe also gives me the clip art function, and I made sure I enabled that so I could copy.
Oh, excellent, okay.
And in Adobe, when you copy and paste the article, it doesn't have the highlighting anymore.
Oh, I didn't know that, yeah. One thing I didn't share with you, and I've done this sometimes too, let me just go to, go back to an article. There are
They used to look like that until Adobe started poaching it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
this is how you can actually copy the text too. Now, the problem with that is that it often, remember all those little translations I showed you, getting RN becomes M? That's what happens. So, but let's say I did want to copy this copy and maybe save myself a little time. I would, highlight it, hit copy. I would go back to my article, right click, paste, and there it is. That way you can give a transcribed copy of the article. Now that is helpful for me because of the stuff I've been doing in my, with my books and stuff. That's helped me a lot. And there are some problems that do happen with this. If you see these nice clear lines here, nice clear lines, if you have nice clear lines, it will copy nicely. But if you don't have clear lines, you'll go across the whole page or across to the other, then it's like I can't copy.
And in the past, I used to have to just, when that was happening, copy and paste the line of it.
Right, exactly. But you can fiddle around with that, or you can just say, hey, I'm a fast typer, and I've done that too, translate it, or type it myself.
Can you do an example of leaving something out? I have an issue with my Rossos that always comes up with the word midget.
Okay.
Because there were Rosso midgets. But
Oh no!
can you show me how to leave the word out?
I've run into that too, because I've got Rossos.
So what would be,
Rossos.
what?
So I'm looking for, let's say, just the word Rosso, North Tonawanda, or Rosso minus the midget. That's all I'm really looking for.
The midgets are very famous.
That's really
Not, yeah, so midgets comes up with regular.
With Rosso, R-O-S-S-O-W.
Maybe Carol, not?
That's what I wanted to, I didn't know you could do that, and I don't want the word midget.
And so Rosso and
Not midget.
and not midget. Is there anything else you want in there? Okay.
North Carolina?
I don't know about North Carolina.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could just leave one word out like that.
If you don't have any experience with it.
Yeah, so that's my feeling. But there's no midgets.
No midgets.
I know you could do that.
Where? Yeah, the Rosso midgets. You know what? Maybe I gotta get that.
You put in midget single.
Midget.
Oh, yeah, midgets.
So would you put midget with a asterisk? To get midget?
So there's no midgets.
I think see the midgets are gone now.
So what did you put, and not?
And not. And not.
I wonder if that would work.
And not
My
midget.
mother was very active in church societies and stuff like that. I mean, like every time they would have a meeting, and these people were on the committee and da-da-da. I don't need that. Could I just put in and not the name of the church?
Yes, yeah, you could try. Because
And that would work with like ministers and organists
yeah,
and
the
all
whole
that.
now the thing is whenever you say and not, you might eliminate too something that you do want to see. I mean, there's always that possibility, but the whole idea of this search is to shrink the number of hits and have the ones you want to see come up to the top, or at least so you don't have to go through 5 million stuff, right? So anything that you can try that will shrink the number of hits and target your thing anymore, go. And it's all it really is very experimental. I mean, you really have to be willing to get in there and
I gotta share a story. When I first discovered Fulton, and I'm not a very good computer person, I would find an obit. I would copy it in longhand in my notebook. Then I would type it out. And then I would add it to my
God love you.
Live and learn.
No, right. I mean, so this really does. This really helps. I hope I helped you narrow some things down today.
Shelley, when you put it in Word, then does Word allow you to copy and paste it into, say, a family tree program?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's an image. It's
Because,
like a JPEG.
let's see if I can get Word to work again.
Mhm.
But anyway,
So then
I
you
had to,
Well, you
You said that it came up
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
wrong letters.
My old AOL.
Yeah, you can, yeah, now that I've done this,
Sorry.
I can, it's like I could edit it like a Word document, yeah. Yeah, actually, you know, I
And then last month I
So
was
that, I mean, it does a lot of typing.
click on
right, now you just gotta go in and fix the corrections, yeah.
Now, how would you, if you were going to be really technical about sourcing that, would you say edited by?
But I have to go through a lot of steps. to
Might
get
just say,
where
you know,
to get it.
transcribe. I could say just transcribe by, you know, so I've got the original article here, I've got all the dates, and I've got the actual direct link. And now I've got the transcribed, and I could put, say, transcribed by Shelley Richards.
If you wanted to.
Yeah, if you want to, sure.
I have something that I think is important for them to know. Anytime that they shrink it down, they're also losing information.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, you know, it depends on how broad you're
like
looking
it as
for.
narrow as you want, but
Yeah.
you are losing something.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the specificity of what you're looking for. I'm looking for very specific things. I'm looking for obituaries. I mean, and that's an important thing to say. I've done other searches where I've typed in, like, I wanted to see, this was fun, that was just fun. Try an address lookup. Yes! You know, I could put my address in there and in Lockport, New York, and I found out how often my house was for sale, who bought it, how much it was for sale for. I found all sorts of interesting articles about my father who was arrested because he let the dog out. I go, he did what? That is a really cool, and you could do that the same for people you're researching in your family. You find some really rich information. You might find an article about your father, your grandfather that you never saw before, just by kind of more broadly searching. You know, your grandfather's name and the address in Lockport, and boy, it'll come up. You'd be surprised at things that you'll find. You're not looking for dead people. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a